it's Miss Medare here. Thank you to those of you that handed in work last week again. Now, as you can see on the screen, I'm wanting to start something different with you now. I've been banging on for a few weeks about the statistical tests and how they could be useful for your NEA. And normally, if we were at school at this time of year, we would start your NEA. And in other words, your NEA is your coursework. So from now until the summer holidays, you won't be receiving work from both myself and Miss Wild. You'll only be receiving work from me. And the reason for that is we'd like you to just focus on your coursework and preparing for your coursework. Now, I know that some of you do other subjects that involve coursework, such as history. There are some similarities, however, there are quite big differences with your coursework investigation for geography. So the whole of year 12, we've been really excited about going down to Dorset, and obviously as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, we're unable to go. And that means that the investigations that you would normally do are going to have to be different. So in the past, students have gone to Dorset and they've chosen something down in Dorset to investigate into. Now, with us not going to Dorset this year, it doesn't mean that you can't do your NEA. All it means is the site of your investigation, so the location of it, will be different. What I'm going to say for this is, and I know that a lot of schools do this anyway, so it's nothing out of the ordinary, so I don't want anyone to be worrying or putting any extra pressure on themselves, is you are going to choose a site that is easy for you to access and for you to investigate into. That does mean we need to, as we would have done for Dorset, need to do a risk assessment for it to check that it's safe for you to go there. And I would advise that you go with someone in your family or somebody that you could socially distance yourself with, so you're not by yourselves. Now, that's 10 steps ahead of where we currently are. So before we get ahead of ourselves, I just want to talk you through what the NEA is, what it's worth, how it's assessed, that type of thing. So your NEA is basically a geography fieldwork investigation. So at GCSE, you did 2 fieldwork investigations. We looked at how whether Burbage Brook followed a typical river regime, and we looked at how sustainable Hockerton was. So what you need to do for your A-level coursework is you need to pick something that you want to investigate into. So at GCSE, we as your teachers chose the topic of investigation. At A-level, there's more independence. I think this is really good because it means that you get to investigate into what you find interesting, and because you're choosing what you're investigating into, hopefully you'll have more motivation and more interest in the topic. You are allowed to choose anything from the AQA A-level geography specification. So it doesn't have to be a topic that we have learned about. So in the past, somebody has secured an A grade at Meaden School looking at the ecosystems topic. He did biology and geography, so he did have a bit of background knowledge of ecosystems. And like I said, he did very well, got an A grade. So what would be really useful is for you to have a look at the geography A-level subject content so that you can choose what area of geography you want to investigate into. Just as a little tip, however, something I've noted is students that pick a human investigation, human geography, don't always tend to do as well as those that choose a physical geography investigation. Now, that's not any bias towards human and physical geography. It's just that sometimes it's easier to test and prove a hypothesis and have lots of data for a physical geography investigation. So in terms of your investigation, there is a rough word count, but it's not always followed. So it's roughly between 3,000 and 4,000 words. It is a total of 60 marks, and the marks vary. So it's split into 4 areas, which I'll go through with you in a future Loom video. It is worth a fifth of your A-level grade. So what's really good there is that GCSE, it was 100% examined. That this way you go into your A-level exams having done some work already. It's marked by your teachers, so it will be marked by myself first, and then Miss Wild will have a look at it, and Mr. Sylvester, and then I always find it useful to get another geography teacher outside of Meaden to do a bit of future extra moderation, and then it will be sent off to the exam board for them to moderate. So that's just a little bit of background information for you. Now, in terms of what you want to investigate, what data will you collect, and about the literature, your geography coursework will follow a sort of cycle. And those of you that are wanting to go to university, I think a history and geography coursework is an amazing opportunity for you to practice what it's like to do university level work, especially your dissertation. I wish that this existed when I did my geography A level, because I know that I would have been much more well prepared for my university course. Because what a lot of the time you do at university is you do a dissertation towards the end of your course, and you pick something linked to the subject that you want to investigate into. And that's what you'll be doing for your geography NEA. So you develop an area of focus. You have to find out about something you're interested in, you want to find out more about, and you research into that area, which leads us to this. You find out what already exists in terms of what are other geographers and people saying about this particular topic, and then you decide number 3, how are you going to conduct your investigation? And we did all of these things at GCSE. However, as I said before, we as teachers decided on your focus. We as teachers read up on the areas, and we as teachers decided your sampling strategy. So you can see how your NEA at A level is so much more independent, and this is where it prepares you really well for future education. Then, similar to what we did at GCSE, you have to present your data. So this is where you make your graphs and your charts, and you analyse your data. So at GCSE, we use sort of the mean, the mode, the median to analyse. And the last few weeks, I've been introducing you to some of the more advanced statistical analysis, such as Spearman's rank and chi-squared. So that's where you put that area in. And then, same as GCSE, you draw conclusions. So what did you find out then? This is what I was hoping to see. This is what my data told me. This is what I found out. And then again, the last step, same as GCSE again, you evaluate on what you found out. You evaluate on your method, so how you carried things out. You evaluate your sampling strategy. You evaluate the way you presented your data, the way you analysed it, and you look at whether what you found out has a wider use in the world of geography. So just to give you an idea of a possible investigation is I'll talk you through what I did at university actually for my dissertation. So I decided that I was really interested in rivers, surprise, surprise, and water quality. So I started doing some reading, and I found out that there were a group of farmers in Wales that were struggling with the water quality in their local rivers. They wanted to diversify the way that they got money. So at the time that I was researching, they were mainly doing sheep farming, and they wanted to introduce more tourism. But they found that there were no fish in the water, and they suspected that it was because the water was of poor quality. So that's the research that I did. I looked into like water quality, I looked into what could affect water quality, I looked into that particular part of Wales. And then I decided, right, what am I going to do then? How am I going to collect this data? So I chose three little river streams. One had been affected by sheep farming, so the water, so the chemicals of the sheep were going into the river. One had never been affected by sheep farming, and one was in the past, but wasn't really at the time. And I decided to use a sort of systematic sampling strategy that I went across three river streams, and at every 100 meters, I collected some data. And the data I collected was something called diatoms, and they're sort of this single-celled organisms right at the start of a food chain or food web. And I basically spent a summer rubbing those off rocks, which was not very exciting. And then I went back to university and I analysed my results. I looked at what organisms were growing there. And as you will know, some organisms grow in clean environments and some in dirty environments. And I created some graphs and charts, and I did some statistical tests to find out whether there were any patterns or things that I saw happen by chance. And I was able to conclude that the sheep farming was affecting the water quality, that the chemicals that they put on the sheep were running off into the river, and that's why they weren't able to have any fish there. And when I was reflecting on the wider meaning of my findings, I suggested to the farmers that they don't rear sheep as close to the river, or they put something in place to stop it. And I evaluated. I said that I could have done more sampling, so rather than doing it every 100 meters, every 50 meters, and I could have used some more statistical tests because I had lots, like 6,000 pieces of data, which you will not need for A level. It's not that thorough. That I could have run more tests. So that's just an example for you. At the bottom of this page, you can see that I've put a web link. That web link is to the AQA website, to the geography page, and it's all the subject content, because what I want you guys to do over the next week is look at all the topics in physical and in human geography, and I want you to look for what you find interesting. What would you want to research into? And it's very, very important that you pick something you're interested in, because this is something that you'll probably be working on from now, so that's June, until next sort of March time. So a long time you'll be working on this. So you need to choose something that you find interesting, but also things that you could easily go and research. And obviously we're not going on a trip altogether because of the coronavirus. That it's got to be somewhere that you are able to visit and that you think you could collect enough data for. Now, something I've found over the years marking the coursework is that students don't always collect enough data. Now, when we were learning about the chi-squared and Spearman's rank test, you hopefully would have heard me say that you need quite large data sets. So you can't just collect 10 pebbles, you need to have 20 pebbles. Or in a questionnaire, you can't just ask 5 people, you might have to ask 15 people. Because if we want to draw conclusions and make our data representative or make generalizations, we've got to have more data. So when you're thinking about, oh, I really like this topic, I want to investigate into that for my geography coursework, stop and consider whether you think you'd be able to find enough data. So your first job this week then is to have a look through the subject content, and I'd like you to click on that website link or go on to the website and find that page. And I just want you to pick out maybe 5 or 6 areas of geography that you would be interested in researching into, and just write them down. So it might be that you're interested in the water and carbon topic, and there's a specific area in the water and carbon topic, or it might be the changing places topic that you've looked at with Miss Wild. So pause now. This might take you an hour or 2 to properly have a think about. This is why Miss Wild isn't setting work either at the moment, because we really want you to spend some quality time preparing for your NEA. So you should have had time to look on the AQA website, and you should have a list of a few aspects of the spec or specification that you'd be interested in exploring. So as you can see here, I've made a little table. So each sort of section of the coursework, so 1 to 8, what you'll be doing and whether it's work you have to do by yourself or you could do with me or somebody else. So exploring your focus, I can help and guide you with. So I can talk to you about, say, if one of you is still interested at looking at coasts, I could maybe guide you and help you with some ideas of, will you get enough data? Where could you go? That type of thing. In terms of your actual title of the investigation and your maybe hypotheses or smaller questions that will help you answer your main investigation title, you have to come up with that yourself. So I cannot give you a question and say, look, I know you're interested in changing places, why don't you investigate into this? So you've got to find that out yourself. That's really important. In terms of coming up with how you're going to collect that data, so your methodology and the sampling strategy, so stratified, systematic, random, all of that stuff. I can give you some guidance with that and talk you through things, which is fine. And then with your primary data collection, you could go with somebody else to do this. So, and I would advise that you do go with somebody else for your own safety. So you might be going into Sherwood Forest and you might be collecting some data there. Secondary data. So I would advise that every piece of coursework involves some secondary data. So remember, primary data is what you go out to get. Secondary data has already been collected and you find it. That's independent work. So you've got to do that yourself. You find sources of secondary data. Now I'd say this secondary data collection section is what A-level students find the hardest. They don't always spend enough time looking for different sources. And I don't mean Wikipedia, because that's not always a reliable source. It's like newspaper articles and things like that. Then actually putting your work into graphs and charts, you have to do yourself. Analysing your data, you have to do yourself. That's why I've been helping by teaching you about statistical tests. And then your conclusions and evaluation, you will do yourself too. So you can see where I can help and where you're expected to do things yourself. Now, what I would like you to do this week, on top of exploring the different parts of the specification and thinking of 5 areas, is I want you to complete a proposal form and I'd like you to send it to me. So I'm going to show you each page of it and talk you through. So just pop your name in there and I want you to come up with investigation title. So to what extent do endogenous factors influence the meaning of water? That's just something I've made up. And then where in this specification does this come from? So how is it linked to the A-level geography specification? What's your sort of, if you were telling somebody at home what you were aiming to find out, what would you put in simple terms there? And then what would be your smaller hypotheses or smaller questions that you would try and ask in your investigation to find this information out? Then where do you expect to go? So where are you wanting specifically? Don't just put England down. Where specifically, what time, town, what specific area are you going to collect your data? What safety concerns do you need to take into account, or ethical issues, sort of questionnaires asking people, use of people's data, taking pictures of places, etc. What primary data do you expect to collect, and is it qualitative? So is it opinion based, or is it quantitative, numbers based? What should you have? Just so that you know, some pieces of coursework will be more quantitative and some will be more qualitative. In order for you to use some of the statistical tests that we've learned about, you'd have to have some quantitative data. So bear that in mind when you are planning your investigation. Again, you'd want to have 2 to 3 pieces of primary data and 2 to 3 pieces of secondary data, I would advise. And over here, an overview of your quantitative data. So who will you be getting that data from? Where exactly are you going to get it from? Different sites. So say, remember when we went to Burbage Brook, we didn't just go to one part of the river, we went to 3 different sections of the river. What equipment will you need? Because some of you may need equipment and you're more than welcome to borrow that from school. Obviously, it would mean that you'd have to collect it from school and I'd make sure that it was clean and ready and would leave it somewhere in school for you to collect, but we can arrange that near the time. How will you actually collect the data? So this is like step by step, yeah? Imagine you're telling a year 7 student how to collect the data. So remember when we went to Burbage Brook and we did the velocity of the river, and we had to say step by step. One person had a measuring tape, you pulled it to 5 meters, another person then stood 5 meters away. The third person dropped the tennis ball into the river. The fourth person hit the stopwatch. We stopped it when it got to 5 meters. We threw it into the middle of the river channel. We repeated it 3 times. So it's got to be really broken down and really clear. When do you expect to go? So dates and how often. Are you only going to go once, or are you going to visit at a certain time each week, over 3 weeks, or whatever? What sampling technique will you use and why you'll use that sampling technique? That's okay. Then this bit's quite important for me to know. So what information might you be missing? What aren't you sure about that you might need, and I can maybe help here? What are your known unknowns? Like, are you not sure about a specific area that you've decided to do, like location wise, or just any help that you want basically goes in there. But consider what statistical tests, Spearman's rank I could for this, or chi-squared I could use. So I want you to think about that. And then I want you to think, for the data you've collected or you plan collecting, how could you present it? A radar graph, a compound bar graph, I would advise at A level you use different types of techniques, and more sort of advanced techniques would gain you more marks. Are you going to put any data on maps? Now, that's something that I've found examiners seem to really like, is when students represent data on a map. So they might have a map of house prices or something, and they use different colours to show the house prices are higher and lower. Are you going to use any GIS? Now, in terms of GIS, that's information technology, which I will talk you through in the Loon video. So that is what I would like you to complete for the end of the week. You can send in more than one proposal. Please be aware and do not be disappointed if, when I give you the feedback next Monday, I've asked you to think of something else to investigate into. Now, in my experience, it's taken the majority of students 3 or 4 goes before they get their final investigation title and they've thought everything through. It is quite a long process. It's lengthy, and you are more than welcome to be messaging me via Teams or email over the next week to get some ideas. If it's a human geography related question and you think that Wild might be able to help you, then feel free to email her too. And as I said, there's no problem with having 3 or 4 goes about this. It is really important that you think about all of these sections that I've put on, because the students that don't think about all of these things later on, once they've collected all of the data, they're writing up their investigation, they realise that they've got things missing or they haven't thought of things, and it really impacts their grade on maybe gaining the C instead of an A or a B. So I do really want you to spend the time looking at this. So that is task for this week. I will also on Teams attach some helpful documents for you to look at. So I would like you to have a look through them as well, just to give you a bit of an idea of other people's coursework and what it might look like. Good year 12. I look forward to seeing what you come up with and what you're interested in investigating into. And like I said, please feel free to come and talk to me about it by email or Teams, because normally we would do this in a classroom environment and would have a long chat. A last point, really sorry that I didn't mention this earlier, is because we have a small class, it means that no 2 people can be investigating into the same thing. So that's quite important for me to know on time, those of you that are doing the data, who's wanting to investigate into what, because we can't have any overlap, and I will ask people to change their investigation titles if I do any issues. So good luck, and I look forward to